Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. Sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS Legacy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. I'm absolutely disgusted by this whole Jussie Smollett situation. And I'm disgusted because this is a complete abuse of our American criminal justice system. Now, last night, your Jussie Smollett was released from Cook County Jail pending an appeal of his conviction for a 6-month sentence for filing a false police report. Now, back in 2020, your Jussie Smollett filed a police report saying that he was the victim of a hate crime where he was attacked by so-called Trump or MAGA supporters in Chicago. However, as the police did their investigation, they soon found out that the whole incident never happened, and they filed charges against your Jussie Smollett for filing a false police report. And as the special prosecutor took this case to trial, they secured a conviction against your Jussie Smollett where he was sentenced to get 6 months in jail. And your Jussie Smollett, after getting this 6-month sentence, then decided to pretend, as I see it, to act erratically. He then talked about how he was not suicidal and then went out and pumped a Black Power fist. And when I looked at those gestures, they were absolutely full of it, just as full of it as your Jussie Smollett is, because it's looking like to me your Jussie Smollett just can't handle taking responsibility for his actions. Now, 6 days into his sentence, your Jussie Smollett was out here telling us that he's immunocompromised and cannot be inside of a jail. And he also goes on to say that he's having mental health issues because he had to be put in solitary confinement. But what it looks like to me is that your Jussie Smollett doesn't want to go out here and deal with the fucked up prize he received for playing a stupid game with white supremacy. Now, your Jussie Smollett thought that he could go out here and play the victim card because he thought that people would feel sorry for him, and that's where all of his problems wound up starting, because the reason why he staged this incident in Chicago was basically because he wanted to get attention from Hollywood and the public so that he could go out here and use that as leverage when he negotiated another deal with his executive producer Lee Daniels to get more airtime on the show Empire when it was on the air, and he wanted to get an increase in salary from $60,000 an episode to an undisclosed sum of money. And staging that incident as related to making it out to be a hate crime was extremely reprehensible and completely unethical as I see it. And the reason why I see it as completely unethical is because he was looking to exploit the black community, and he was looking to exploit the black community so that he could go out here and leverage a better salary for himself, not thinking about the safety of black people or even white people out here who would have been caught up in their emotions as related to him polarizing people on the whole subject of race. Most of those people, if they had gotten caught up in Jussie Smollett's rhetoric as related to the stunt he was trying to pull, they would have been out here fighting as related to protests, and many people could have possibly wound up getting injured or possibly losing their lives. And your Jussie Smollett didn't care about any of those people. No, it was all about him getting attention and fame for himself. And all he cared about was trying to get more scenes on his show, Empire, and getting more money out of Lee Daniels. And that's what makes your Jussie Smollett an extremely reprehensible human being, because he had no regard for the lives of any other person out here. It was all about him going out here getting attention for himself. and going out here and making himself a bigger star. And now that he has to face accountability for his actions, what your Jussie Smollett wants to do is he wants to now play the victim once more, talking about how he's not suicidal, talking about how he needed to be in solitary confinement because he was having mental health issues, and he was even low enough to talk about how he's immunocompromised, which shows me how completely immoral this man is and how he's just, again, a reprehensible human being that has no sense of morality. And it seems like even the Smollett brother, he comes out here talking about how straight black men would be treated differently, and that's just a pile of bullshit as I see it. Because to say that a straight black man would be treated differently and get no sentence, that just shows how out of touch your Jussie Smollett's brother is and how dysfunctional this entire family is. Because if a straight heterosexual black man like myself were to have gone out here and filed a false police report, I can guarantee you that the criminal justice system would not have gone as easy on a straight black man like myself the way that they did your Jussie Smollett. Now, your Jussie Smollett played the stupid game with white supremacy, and he won a fucked up prize in having to do 6 months in jail. But if a heterosexual black man were to have gone out here and pulled a stunt like this, I guarantee you that he would not only have been tried and convicted, he would also be given the maximum sentence. And he would have been given the maximum sentence because white supremacy would have wanted to make an example out of that black man, and they would have wanted to send a message to the entire black community that if you go out here and you play a stupid game with white supremacy and you try to call yourself finessing white supremacy, they are going to make an example out of you, and they're going to make it where no one ever tries this again. And that's basically what the criminal justice system wanted to do with your Jussie Smollett. They wanted to send a message to the world that you do not go out here and play these games as related to race, because race is a serious matter, race is a serious subject, and it is not something meant to be trivialized by some 2-bit celebrity who wants to try to make his star rise. And again, a straight black man would be sitting in the Cook County jail right now for the next 3 years, and he would be sitting there having to deal with his sentence. Unfortunately, your Jussie Smollett, he's still trying to finesse the system, he's still trying to game the system, and he just shows me how much malice of forethought that this sellout has. Because this sellout, he wants to go out here and try to play pro-black whenever it's convenient for him as related to him having to deal with punishment. Then he wants to monkey branch over and then talk about he's a member of the alphabet community, and then he wants to go out here and make himself the victim once more. And then he and his family want to shame black people for not supporting him. Well, I have a critical question to ask your Jussie Smollett and his supporters. Where are all of the alphabet people who are supposed to be standing by you? I mean, I thought that you had all of these supporters in the alphabet community, but there don't seem to be many who come out for your Jussie Smollett, because they know how unethical your Jussie Smollett is, and they know how much of a reprehensible human being he is as related to his character. Because as a man who has absolutely no ethics whatsoever, most people in the alphabet community who are moral and ethical want nothing to do with this individual, because if he would lie about race, he would also lie as related to a hate crime, as related to sexual orientation, and he would polarize people and put alphabet people's lives in jeopardy. And that's why no community is actively out here supporting your Jussie Smollett, because your Jussie Smollett is a reprehensible human being, and he's a human being who has absolutely no ethics. Now, I find it just shows me how backwards many of these blue states are as related to criminal justice, because Bill Cosby sat in jail for 3 years for a crime he did not commit, but Jussie Smollett gets released from jail after 6 days. So your blue states are really showing how screwed up their interpretation of criminal justice is. First, they establish a standard of trust and belief for a heterosexual black man, but this black man, because he's supposedly a victim of something, he gets released out here on bond, and he's already been convicted of a crime. Why is it that Bill Cosby, who went out here and tried to appeal, could not get a release even during a COVID-19 pandemic that could put his health at risk, but a so-called immunocompromised Jussie Smollett, he can go out here and get released on bond? I mean, these are questions that show us how dysfunctional the criminal justice system in blue states are, and it just shows us how things are just completely backwards. Now, your Jussie Smollett wants to argue that he made a deal with Kim Foxx. He wants to take a page from Bill Cosby, but the whole thing is, I don't think his appeal is going to get through, because even though he made a deal with Kim Foxx, a special prosecutor was brought in, and once the special prosecutor was brought in, all deals were taken off the table, and he didn't have an agreement with that prosecutor. So I believe that technicality may not work out for your Jussie Smollett, but your Jussie Smollett may manage to get away with time served. And again, it's as I see it, a completely egregious travesty of justice, because it's just going to embolden your Jussie Smollett to continue to think he can run games on white supremacy, and it's going to encourage others to think that they can run games on white supremacy. And the whole thing is, this is not something that's really smart to put out here as a precedent, because your Jussie Smollett, he might have gotten away with this kind of stunt, but the whole thing is, another guy may play this stupid game, and he may win a fucked up prize, and he may not be able to get out of jail like your Jussie Smollett. Now, your Jussie Smollett, as I see it again, is a reprehensible human being, and while you have your Jussie Smollett out here, you have many people who want to defend him, like your Taraji P. Hensons, your Samuel L. Jacksons, and that shows me how disconnected many in Black Hollywood are. Many of the people in Black Hollywood do not understand how detrimental your Jussie Smollett's actions are on black people as a collective, because your Jussie Smollett's actions are things that white supremacists will go out here and use as a reason to be justified in not taking the claims of a black person who is a victim of a hate crime seriously. Most people who are victims of hate crimes, they're going to have a harder time getting their case through the criminal justice system, and that could hurt people like your Ahmaud Arbery's, who thankfully he was able to get justice. Those cases are going to have a lot harder time because of clowns like your Jussie Smollett, who could have easily solved all of his problems by having the courage to go out here and go to his executive producer and ask that executive producer for a meeting. That's all Jussie Smollett needed to do, but he didn't have the courage to do that, and now he wants to sit there and claim that he's some sort of victim or has some sort of mental health problems. No, he does not have any mental health problems. He has a problem taking responsibility, and he has a problem with being a black man in America. He's only black when it's convenient for him to be black. He'll raise the black power fist if he thinks it'll get him out of something, but he doesn't want to take accountability for being a black man and having to deal with the consequences of having to be locked up with other black men. No, he doesn't want to go out here and be put inside of a jail cell for something that he did, and that is the whole sad part about this whole situation, is he's never learned anything from this whole situation. He's still thinking he can get away with doing wrong, and he's still thinking he has a right to go out here and manipulate and abuse people. If anything, your Jussie Smollett is not mentally ill. I would say that he's possibly a sociopath or a psychopath in some fashion, because the way he's manipulating people and manipulating situations is showing me someone who has absolutely no conscience, absolutely no remorse, and absolutely has no willingness to take any sort of responsibility at all. And only a sociopath would sit here and think, oh, I can just go out here, fake a hate crime, and then after I fake the hate crime, I don't want to take any responsibility for it. And when people make me take responsibility for something, they're the bad guys. No, you were the one who was the bad guy. And it's even more disturbing to see that the people around him, like a Taraji P. Henson, would compare what happened to Emmett Till to this, because it just shows how twisted many of those people in Hollywood are. What happened to Jussie Smollett was not the same thing as what happened to Emmett Till. No, Emmett Till was a victim because it was beyond his control, but this was all controlled by Jussie Smollett, a puppet master who was manipulating people, manipulating situations, and making himself out to be a victim of his own actions when he needs to be held accountable for his own actions. And I'd have to say there's a special place in hell for your Jussie Smollett, because his sociopathic actions show, again, no remorse and no regard for people, and he is a depraved individual who has no sort of conscience whatsoever. He wants to sit there and make himself out to be a victim when he was the perpetrator in this situation. And as the perpetrator in this situation, what is really troubling about this whole situation is he shows he has absolutely no remorse whatsoever for putting people's lives at risk, going out here and polarizing people on race, and then thinks that nothing of his behavior, showing no sense of apology, no sense of remorse, and showing us he has absolutely no character whatsoever. I mean, he is a rotten human being, and while some say he will never act again, he's somebody that really shows me how bad the character is of people in Black Hollywood, because for those bootlicks to sit there and give this sociopath, as I see it, a pass, it shows me how depraved they are in Black Hollywood, because there's no excuse I could make for your Jussie Smollett. Your Jussie Smollett is somebody who, as I see it, deserves whatever he gets, and the whole thing is that he's out here thinking that he's getting over on people, not understanding that he's made it much harder for other black people out here, and he wants to go out here and act like nothing happened. And again, when I look at him, I see him no different than I see any other type of person who tells lies, like a Susan Smith. I mean, he's just, again, a horrible human being. And this horrible human being, what's sad is people don't see how this is as much a travesty of justice as the way Bill Cosby was railroaded through the criminal justice system. They don't see how your Jussie Smollett is on the downtown side and Bill Cosby was on the uptown side. This is all a travesty of justice, and it's a travesty of justice because a man is not being held accountable for his actions, and he's going to think that he can go on to go do this again. And what's sad is some other idiot out here may be encouraged by Jussie Smollett to pull another stunt like this. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. If you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find many of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, featuring a bonus pin-up and the other 2 books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online bookstores everywhere today.